An East African Community's verification mission is in the Democratic Republic of Congo to assess the country's suitability to be admitted into the community. The verification team comprises 3 experts from each partner state. The regional bloc's member states are eyeing the Democratic Republic of Congo market of 86.7 million people and eager to have the vast country join the bloc. The DRC is currently a member of the Southern African Development Community.
We are in delegation with Professor Manasseh, who is representing the ministers of this African community. And then we have the permanent secretary representing the permanent secretaries in East Africa, Dr. Kevin Desai. And we have a judge president of the East African Court of Justice. So we are part of this delegation to come to bring the message to President of DRC, His Excellency Felix Tshisekedi, a message from the President of East African Community based on the application of DRC to join East African Community. So there was a meeting by the presidents of East Africa, 6 of them, on 27th of February, and the decision was made that I should, as a Secretary General, come to DRC and launch the verification process, the process of admitting DRC into the East Africa. So today the President has officiated this launch, and there is a technical team in Kinshasa sitting with the DRC team to make sure that the process is finished within 8 days. After 8 days, we will do a report and take it to the presidents of East Africa. They will consider the report, after which they decide the admission of DRC into East African Community. So this will make the East African Community get the 7th member, DRC. And you know DRC is neighboring South Sudan, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and Tanzania. It neighbors 5 countries of East Africa. So DRC is an important country when it joins the East African Community. And it is a big, good relationship between DRC and other members of East Africa. So together we become a very strong bloc. Globally and also economically, we become very strong as one. The people of DRC will benefit because there will be free movement of people from DRC to other countries without visa, without passport, if they are fully in the EAC. Number 2, the DRC will nominate 9 members to come to the Parliament of East Africa, so that the people of DRC can be represented in the Parliament. They will also become part of the judges or the court of the East African Court of Justice. And also movement of goods from the port of Dar es Salaam or Mombasa become very easy and without any problem. So this is the message we are bringing to the President, and the President has received this message with a lot of happiness, and he is looking forward to this report to be out, and hopefully very soon DRC will be a full member of the East African Community. So that is the message I brought as the Secretary General of the East African Community.
For more on this, we are now joined via Zoom by Nixon Katembo, the African Affairs Analyst and Channel Africa producer, Kiswahili Service. Nixon, a very good evening to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to The Globe.
Good evening to you, Simpiwe, and good evening to the viewers.
So what would the admission into the regional bloc mean for the DRC?
I think this is a very important step for the DRC. If you look at how the country has been battling insecurity in the eastern part, but not only that, but also the issue of economic development for that country, as well as the human security. You look at, for instance, what is happening in that particular region when to come to look at the human problems that have been caused by security there. So if the DRC is joining the East African Community, maybe this might alleviate some of the problems that the country is currently facing. You would recall that most of the wars that have happened in the DRC since 1996 up until to date have had in some way its origin in the East African Community neighboring countries. You would recall the former president, late Laurent Kabila, was living in Tanzania as a refugee and as a former rebel leader during the Mobutu regime. Then the subsequent rebellion that happened and brought him to power originated from Rwanda, going into the DRC, including Uganda. So if these countries have decided that then they have to join, admit the DRC to become part of the East African community, perhaps one would think that this might bring a sense of stability in the DRC. However, the question remains, does it feel the necessary requirement to be fully admitted to the East African bloc?
Now, the technical team from the EAC will take about 80 days to compile the report. So do you think that the DRC will meet the conditions of admission? I mean, in light of the government still battling rebels in the east of the country?
Well, you just talk about the rebels. If you read the Article 124 of the East African Treaty that established the East African community, talks about the peace and security. And it says that if any member state which does not have stability cannot be admitted, there are issues of human rights violations and so on that are talked about in that particular article of the protocol of the East African Treaty. So it is difficult at this point to see how it's going to really fulfill the requirement per letter of the East African protocol. However, one would think that the member who are in Kinshasa assessing the readiness of the country to join the community might look at the overriding interest for the DRC to join the community rather than looking at the protocol and its requirement to join the community.
So what sort of economic impact will the admission into the bloc be? I mean, if it succeeds, what impact will it have on ordinary citizens?
Well, it has to be on both ways. One, part of the large chunk of the population in the DRC, close to 60% of the population, are found on the eastern part of the DRC, right from the southeast in the former Katanga province up to the northeast, which is the Ituri and Haut-Uele province. So this is a market that is open up now for the East African countries, including which is Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, and Uganda, and Kenya. Then you have Kenya and Tanzania having the major ports for entry for goods coming to the Eastern DRC. And over the years, close to 80% of exports and imports of that particular region has happened through the ports of Mombasa and the ports of Dar es Salaam. So to the people, it might be that removing the tariff barriers for export and the imports of goods might actually perhaps decrease the basic necessity, the price, and perhaps also the bureaucracy that goes along with goods and services, as well as the movement of people. And on the social front, there is a interlinkage of communities along those borders, especially if you look at in Burundi, for instance, you find some people who are in Burundi who have family members in Eastern DRC, and those who are in Eastern DRC who have family members in Burundi. Vice versa is the case with Rwanda, is the case with Uganda, and is the case to some extent with Tanzania. So this will open up for the people-to-people relations to improve even more without hindrance. However, the question remains whether the issues of security whether now the political leadership have seen that a stability of the DRC might be far more of the beneficial to both countries of the East African Community region. Because I'm saying this because of the historical nature of the security in that particular region, and the blaming of, the trade of blames between neighboring countries, especially Rwanda and Uganda, and the DRC bickering over security issues, including Burundi. You would recall that before the former president of Burundi, Jean-Pierre Nkurunziza, including the current president, Evariste Ndayishimiye, when they were rebel leaders during the CNDD, FDD, they had their hideout in Eastern DRC. So those are the key issues that are going to play out. Perhaps having the DRC join the East African community, will this be or perhaps signal an end to the stability in the Great Lakes region? I think that is the question that we should be looking forward. Yeah. But in my own reading of the situations, that perhaps it's a good move and it's a good start. The only problem that I assess here is for the country like the DRC, which has been a very unstable, with the lack of key strong institutions to run at the same pace with the other East African nations, they might find it quite difficult. One of which is the lack of national identity in the DRC, the lack of national census, which should have been done to quantify and qualify the number of people and the terms of business trade volumes that the other East African members will be having with the DRC. However, in terms of industrialization, perhaps this might open up for the DRC to even industrialize or benefit more the industries across the other East African countries, such as Rwanda and Uganda and Kenya, especially Rwanda and Uganda on the mineral beneficiation. You'd know that they have already refinery of gold and other precious minerals such as coltan being treated in Rwanda. So you have countries like the DRC, which is producing such a raw material, just going across without any trade barrier that comes along with the free movement of goods and the free movement of services and the free movement of labor, as it is mentioned in the East African Protocol. Then other East African countries might stand far more better to benefit economically rather than the DRC itself.
Okay, we'll talk about the bilateral agreements that have been signed by both countries yesterday in a moment. But if admitted, the DRC will become a part of the East Africa Court of Justice. So what kind of impact will this have on the broader body politics of the DRC?
One, it might have a broader impact in a sense that, one, it have to look at the process of the democratization within the DRC. Second, it have to look at building institutions of the state in as much as it has been done in those other East African countries. For instance, Uganda have a strong institution in terms of, relatively strong in terms of how you look at the political outlook of the region is. You have Tanzania, which is relatively stable, and you have Kenya, which have also another strong institution. Whether the DRC is going to borrow a leaf of political stability from these countries and build institutions that will work for the citizens, but also will work for the development of that country, then that's when we can say that the East African community might be beneficial to the DRC. And of course, if you look at the recent development in terms of security development, Kenya sending its troops to the DRC to help alleviate the insecurity there by bolstering the Forced Intervention Brigade under the UN peacekeeping forces, but also the recent concluded agreement between President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni of Uganda in building roads inside the DRC. perhaps that signal a shift on how politics is done in the region, but also the economic front. So there are many issues that are going to be of greater interest for political observers of the, as well as economic analysts in the region.
Now, yesterday, both leaders signed bilateral agreements between both countries, which touched on the promotion and protection of investments, one of them, and while the second one relates to the avoidance of double taxation and tax evasion between the two countries, and the third agreement is a memorandum of gold mining cooperation. So, with the signing of this bilateral agreement, will it perhaps lead to the thawing of often frosty relations between the two countries?
Well, I think one of the critical issues in any economic development is always centers around the security and stability at the same time. Now, if you look at what has been happening in Eastern DRC is owing more largely to the economic nature of the conflict that has been happening in that country. And if these agreements are going to lead to relative stability in the DRC, I think then that might be a positive outcome of these agreements. However, you know that there is always that mistrust between the two countries, and especially when you look at the issues that has always been at the center stage of mistrust, such as the harboring of rebel group or sponsoring of rebel groups by both countries. On the other hand, you have the FDLR that Rwanda has been using as a pretext to get into the DRC. One would think that perhaps by signing these agreements, then this can come to an end.
All right, Nixon, thank you so much for your analysis on this matter.
Thanks for having me.